What is up, guys? It's Brillymister here and welcome to today's video. If you do enjoy the video, then don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment and subscribe, and hit all the links up down below to Twitch and Discord. Enjoy the video. What is up, everybody? Welcome to my Elite Dungeons 2 Dragonkin Laboratory full guide. This guide is for solo and group. My clips, all for the purpose of the guide, are done solo, but it's exactly the same in a group. It's just slightly easier. But for the guide, I have done all of the clips solo. So without further ado, we'll get into the guide, and I hope you find it helpful. So we're going to start off with some recommended stats. These are the stats that I would recommend to solo. However, if you're going with some people that have already been a few times and you're going in a group, then you can probably get away with lower stats than this. But if you're solo, and this is definitely what I'd recommend to make your life as easy as possible, you want 95 plus prayer, just so you can use turmoil and all of the other combat damage boosting abilities, along with soul split. 90 plus combat stats so you can actually do some damage and not take too much damage. 96 herb lore for overloads is absolutely amazing, and 96 summoning so you can use a yak while learning. However, if you are in a group or a bit more advanced, then you're going to want to use either a steel titan or a ripper demon for the increased damage. Now let's get on to some useful items for ED2. I've highlighted super anti-fire here, as I would go so far as to say it's not a useful item, it is pretty much a requirement, as there are so many dragons in there. The amount of damage you'll take from Dragonfire will be pretty silly. Cinderbane gloves help, as most of the stuff in here is poisonable, so it's just a bit of extra damage. The Dragon Slayer sigil again is amazing. It's really good for the bosses when you want to get that extra bit of damage to just try and kill it off a little bit quicker, and again it's just extra damage. The same with Vuln runes / Vuln bombs. Is just more damage and is really good for the bosses, and Vuln runes is actually quite cheap, so I use them on like the Hydrix dragons and all the stuff that has a large amount of hit points. Weapon poison again is the same sort of thing as Cinderbanes. In fact, they do actually stack together, so you can get a big amount of poison damage on your opponents if you have both. And the last thing that I'd recommend here is a Ring of Vigor or a Luck of the Dwarves switch, just so you have extra adrenaline and extra drop chance from the main bosses. However, I have the Luck of the Dwarves on the Relic, which because I'm lazy, so I just bother with the Vigor switch. ED2 is actually a really easy place to be able to access. You can get there via the PVM Hub portal direct if you've got at least one Blackstone dragon kill. If you haven't, you can go through the Fateful portal to ED3, right click the chest outside there, and that can then teleport you to ED2. Other than that, you can go in the grouping system and use that to teleport yourself there, and the third way to get there that I definitely wouldn't recommend is through running through the wilderness. However, I would definitely not recommend that, as it takes a lot longer and is just generally much worse way to get there than the other two options here. So now we're on to the gear setup, and I'm going to start with magic. There is no right or wrong gear setups. This is the one that I personally use, and it works for me. Feel free to upgrade, downgrade, and personalize as you wish. I'd recommend that you have tier 85 plus weapon if you're soloing, and tier 70 plus armor. However, if you're in a group or a lower level, then these can be downgraded if you're in a trio. A Soul's Ami or a Blood Fury necklace are great options here, along with a Ring of Death, just to save you some death costs if you're learning. Luck of the Dwarves is something you can camp as well if you don't have a Ring of Death. I'd also recommend taking Overloads, Brews, and a Shield Switch for resonance inside your inventory. It's also worth noting that I do take a Chaotic Staff, and I do use that as a planted feat switch. You obviously don't need the Staff of Sliske that I'm using, I just don't happen to own a Nox Staff, but you can use a Nox Staff or even just the Chaotic Staff if you really needed to, but I would try and recommend tier 85 plus. So on to the melee setup that I use when I do Elite Dungeon 2. Like I said in the previous clip, this is what I personally use, and I do favour magic, so that I normally use magic for more. But if you do melee it, you can get faster kill times and it can be quicker, but I personally prefer mage. I'd once again recommend tier 85 plus weapon and tier 70 plus armour, and very similar stuff for the amulet, Blood Fury, Luck of the Dwarves, or a Ring of Death. You can see my inventory here is a little bit more advanced and has got a few more switches than my mage setup, and again these are not necessary, but they will increase your damage if you do want to take some switches with you. Once again, as always, I would recommend you take a shield switch and adrenaline potions just to help you with your kill times on the bosses. And finally we are on to the range setup. There's a lot of similarities here with the other setups, and once again it's free to interpretation and you can upgrade, downgrade and customize this as you wish. One advantage of using range is you get to utilise mechanised chin chompers, which are really good for clearing the slimes at the beginning, along with the lava golems, and I just generally will speed up the first part of the dungeon. It is, however, the style that I use least here, but that is down to personal preference rather than anything else. So the last thing before we actually get on to the actual dungeon guide is the mechanics of the chest. So you can do the quest Curse of the Blackstone, which will change the chest slightly. Before the quest, it has a 5% chance to double a drop when it's toggled on to loot for you. So therefore it's recommended that you toggle it off before each boss, so you get the flat 20% or 1 in 5 chance of a double drop. Once you've done the quest, in addition to getting a 10% damage reduction within the dungeons, you can unlock the chance to be able to bank with the chest for 750k Dungeoneering tokens, and you will always have the 20% double drop chance, which is really nice and convenient, means you don't have to mess around with toggling your chest on and off. And the damage reduction is nice as well, so it's definitely a worthwhile quest to do. So for the first part of the dungeon, you enter here and are instantly on some jellies. You want to pray melee here, bunch them all in the corner, use devotion, and then stack your area of effect abilities, such as corruption shot and detonate. Chin chompers are very good here if you're ranging. Once you've killed enough that the gate goes down, you can exit and come straight back in, and they'll have all despawned so you don't have to deal with all of them, which is a really good way to save yourself some time and a bit of damage. For this first bit here with the red dragons, you want to hug the western wall to try and avoid aggroing the spiders. Sometimes it's not possible, and as you can see in this clip here, I did unfortunately aggro some spiders, and you want to kill them off fairly quick because they do a lot of damage, and you'll definitely see that with the ones later on in the dungeon with the lava strike worms. You're going to need to pray range against them if you get them. Next up, we're on to the lava golems. So you want to have these here, again, pray melee. I don't use devotion here, I save it for when these jellies come over because you get a lot more damage stacked on you then. But once again, you want to use your mechanised chins or your area of effect abilities, be that corruption blast, corruption shot, detonate, hurricane quake, that sort of thing for whatever combat style you're using. You can sometimes avoid the books here aggroing you, but it's not always possible. But you can just kill them off, they don't do a massive amount of damage. Then you're on to the Celestial Dragons. The Celestial Dragons are fairly easy, they're kind of a very chill part of the dungeon. The only real mechanic they have to deal with is there'll be like a little box that appears over them, saying they're going to heal. You can avoid this just by using any stun on them. I'm using Mage, so I either use Asphyxiate or Impact, and that will stun them. Deep Impact would also work. And yeah, so you just stun them and it stops them healing. However, if they do heal, if you haven't got a stun off cooldown, it's not the end of the world. So now we arrive at the first boss, Astalon. It's only got 3 real mechanics, but when I was learning, it's definitely the one that I struggled with the most, if I'm honest. It's actually what prompted me to buy a Ring of Death when I took lots and lots of deaths here. So the mechanics are the Pulsar, which sort of hits almost like cannon-like typeless damage on you, and you just want to kill this quickly as you can. I tend to use a wild magic or something on it, just to get it down quickly. Failing that, you can use a debilitate, and you'll take a little bit less damage from it. The next attack is the Wormhole, which you'll see a bar on you spawn, and you want to just spawn it and then move away from it. You want to spawn it on one of the quadrant axes, so you can lure the neutron star into it there, where it will go white. The neutron star spawns randomly, which is a bit annoying, so sometimes you can get a really good spawn, sometimes you can get a horrible spawn. The last mechanic is the rain, which you can see on the left hand side of the screen now, and you can see why we want to place the wormhole on this axis here. It's so that you can avoid it if it's in either of those 2 quadrants. You can stand in the alternate quadrant to not get hit by the rain. If your DPS is enough, you should be able to get this through in one Sunshine or Berserk rotation through the whole boss. If you have a little bit less DPS, you might have to go through the mechanics a second time, and that will make the boss take a little bit longer, but it's a fairly easy boss if you get through it and once you've got the mechanics down. Once you've killed Astalon, you're then on to the second part of the dungeon. There's nothing in this part which is particularly dangerous other than the spiders if you do aggro them. The first part starts off with some Celestial Dragons, and then you're on to the Lava Strike Worms and the spiders. If you run north a bit, you can bunch all the spiders up so you can Chin Chomper them, or failing Chin Chomper them, you can just detonate and corruption shot them if you're using magic. They're a little bit more annoying to deal with melee, but not the end of the world. You want to then kill the 2 strike worms to drop the gate, come across, and after that you have just got to kill a lot of individual black dragons. They don't pose any particular threat, and this is actually a very, very easy part of the dungeon. It just takes a little while to get through, as they do have a fairly substantial amount of hit points. Once you've killed all these black dragons here, you'll then be on to a little bit where you've got to kill another few lava strike worms, and again, they don't really do a massive amount of damage. You will be able to quite happily soul split throughout the whole lot of them, and then you'll be on to another few black dragons before you reach Verycliff, the second boss. I have sped this clip up of Verycliff a little bit, as in a solo it is a little bit of a longer kill compared with Astalon, so I sped it up a little bit, but you can see the mechanics are the same. The 4 mechanics it has is the spires, which you can see popping up now. You can just resonance this hit for a nice heal, and it will negate a vast majority of your food usage throughout the kill. It will do this periodically through the kill, and you can resonance it every time. You have to kill the spire before you can do any more damage to Verycliff. The next mechanic is the eggs, which you'll have just seen me deal with. You'll see a thing come down from the ceiling, which will either be green or blue, and it will be either shock, ice, or poison. The easiest way to deal with this is to stand underneath it to catch it, and then just go to the colour of egg that it's not. I just differentiate green and blue. Say if you have blue, you go and click on the green egg. If you have green, you go click on a blue egg. As there are 2 different types of blue, but it's still safest to just click on the green. As you saw there, I missed one, and you will get hit about 4,000-ish damage if you do miss one. A more advanced technique would be to use Reprisal and just tank it for a little bit extra damage. The third attack is the dive bomb attack, and you'll see a little red indicator on the floor over you of a dragon which is going to dive down and swoop at you. It doesn't do a massive amount of damage, but you want to wait a couple of seconds and then click away, and it will miss and you will negate that damage completely. The last one is the fire tornado, where it will say something about the flesh and your bones. Fire a big hit at you, which will go as a like triangle on the floor, and you can then just surge away before the fire tornadoes come out. Otherwise, you will take a lot of damage, and it's a really easy one to avoid, but it can be pretty lethal if you don't avoid it. Other than that, it just follows through that rotation, and you just want to keep resonancing spires until you get the kill. Once you've finished your kill at Verycliff, you want to leave the room and teleport with the chest to number 4, and that'll take you back to a bit further back down the dungeon. From here, you want to start killing the Gemstone dragons. The first 2 onyxes here are optional, they're not needed to complete the dungeon, but I kill them because they're really good XP and they have the chance of like dropping onyxes and stuff like that, so they're definitely worth killing, and they'll just follow you anyway. Then you have to kill the 4 here, and then you can carry on progressing. They all have a special attack. As you can see, I get hit by it a couple of times here, where they send some spikes out of the floor. There are 3 different ones for each dragon: the Dragonstone, the Onyx, and the Hydrixes. The Dragonstone Dragons one reduces the timer on your anti-fire. This is really annoying, so it'll get it out of sync with your overload, and it'll just end up meaning you have to drink more doses. The Onyx Dragons just drains your hit points and is the least effective of the lot. In fact, you will have seen at the beginning of this clip, I actually resonanced one of them for like a 4k heal, just because you can. The Hydrix Dragon one is another one you want to definitely avoid, as it drains your adrenaline and it also reduces your adrenaline gain for the next 30 seconds. I always use Vulnerability and my Sunshine on these Hydrix Dragons, as they have a massive chunk of hit points and they take a while to go down otherwise. After that, you've only got the 4 more Dragonstone Dragons to kill, and then you arrive at the chest just before Blackstone Dragon. So you just want to kill these last 4 here, and not worry too much. If you stay within melee distance of them as well, then they won't do their special attack, but it's impossible to stand in melee distance of all of them all the time, so you will definitely get the special attack at some points. So now we get on to the Blackstone Dragon, which is the final boss and the final part of Elite Dungeon 2. It has a few mechanics here, although one of them you can essentially ignore, which is the shadow bombs, and until I actually went into making this guide and started looking into it a bit more, I didn't even know it was a mechanic, I just thought he was attacking me, so you can pretty much ignore that one. The first one is the spikes will come out of the ground. If you have your screen shake on, it will shake, and it's basically like the Hydrix Dragon attack. It will hit you for a massive amount of damage, and you can just avoid it by taking a couple of steps away. The second one is the Black Hands, which you can see what I'm dealing with now on screen. If you are using a staff with magic or a two-handed weapon such as a Noxious Longbow, you can actually safe spot them by standing on the spot I am now, and you don't have to avoid the little hands that come towards you out of the floor, as they can't get to you on that square. If you are meleeing or using a single-handed weapon, you don't have enough range to get him from here, and once you get hit by the mage attack from him, you just want to move off the square you're standing on, and then you'll avoid the black hands that come towards you. Otherwise, they'll hit you for rapid 2Ks, and it's a pretty quick death if you do end up like that. The next one is the Fire Spiral, which is a mechanic that you're about to see now. You can safely soul split through the whole of this, as you are being not attacked by the Blackstone Dragon at all. He just brings a spiral towards you. It's a bit like Vindictive Fire. You just avoid it, and it's not going to do any real sort of damage to you, although it is surprisingly easy to misjudge and end up in it. And again, it's one that if you end up in that fire, it hits sort of rapid 2.5Ks on you, and you definitely don't want to be getting hit by it, because it's again another rapid death, and it quite often will sign you and then you come back to life and then instantly die again, so it wastes your sign. The last mechanic that we need to talk about is the Pogo phase, which is one that you can see going now. If you have the Storm Shards and Shatter ability, it's worth stacking some shards on him now, as he's basically invulnerable, you can't do any damage. However, if you soul split and attack him, your soul split will still heal you, but you'll just do no damage. And then you can use your Shatter after he's out of the Pogo phase and get a nice big hit all in one go. And from there on, it is just the long grind till the end of the kill. You just want to go through your Sunshine and damage rotations, avoiding the spikes that come out of the ground. And that does conclude my full Elite Dungeon 2 Dragonkin Laboratory Guide. I really hope you did find this helpful and useful and enjoy the video. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell icon so you can be notified of all my future content and guides. And in the description down below, there are links to my Twitch and my Discord server. Until next time, guys, see ya.